defendant Kyle Rittenhouse, who is 18 now, 17 at the time this incident occurred. Let me bring in for some quick legal analysis, criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer, standing by in Atlanta, Georgia. Josh, good afternoon. Good to see you. I know you saw the states open. What did you think of it, please?
You know, I thought the state did a really solid job by avoiding the theatrics, by playing down all of the exploitative nature of this crime. They're trying to make this into doing their job, prosecuting people who break the law. It's not a circus. It's not a show. They're going hand in hand with a judge that has a pretty, it's a justiciable and severe character because it's serious stuff that they're dealing with. Not that there can't be some levity, and I think that some of the judges' levity might be a little tone deaf, but certainly it's a professional courtroom. The state did not go break the bounds. They didn't run all over the place, do a big show. They prosecuted a case. We'll be seeing the defense now start up, and I wonder how they respond to that. A lot of defense lawyers would want to make a big show, really shake up the jury. The jury's tired. They've seen this. They want to grab a bunch of attention. So we're going to see how the defense handles the state's presentation, because the initial presentation was strong.
Josh, thank you. Let's take a look back at some of that. This is at one point in the open where the prosecutor is talking about Kyle Rittenhouse having that firearm, that AR-15, and that he was wielding it at one point. Take a look.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The evidence in this case will show that on the night of August 25th, 2020, here in our community of Kenosha, the defendant Kyle Rittenhouse, who was 17 years old at the time, had armed himself with an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle loaded with 30 rounds in the magazine. And using that rifle, he shot and killed Joseph Rosenbaum, an unarmed man. The shot that killed Mr. Rosenbaum was a shot to the back. This occurred after the defendant chased down Mr. Rosenbaum and confronted him while wielding that AR-15. But out of the hundreds of people that came to Kenosha during that week, the hundreds of people that were out on the streets that week, the evidence will show that the only person who killed anyone was the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse. The evidence will show that hundreds of people were out on the street experiencing chaos and violence, and the only person who killed anyone was the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse.
Okay, so that clip was the very start of the state's open, Josh, as you could see there. What did you think of how he chose to begin the open?
You know, it almost begins right out of the textbook. Prosecutors are taught in advanced training and basic training. There are these different theories as to how to present a case. And then when you get to more advanced trial tactics, you start branching out. The state in this case has elected to tell a linear story. They've got some very strong anchor points, such as the fact that prior to Mr. Rittenhouse's actions, everybody was alive. And without Mr. Rittenhouse's actions, everybody would still be alive. And therefore, the problem is Mr. Rittenhouse. And Mr. Rittenhouse is obviously guilty. That is the line that the state's going to stick through this entire case, that absent Kyle Rittenhouse's choices, everybody would be alive. Now, the defense is clearly going forward with a self-defense action. That's going to be a burden that they carry. There's going to be a lot of testimony about the actions of the victims and the other people that were involved in this scene, specifically law enforcement, and what kind of mentality Mr. Rittenhouse was walking around the streets with while carrying a firearm in the middle of what's going to be described as a riot. That provides a lot of grace and room for reasonable doubt. It provides an enormous amount of discretion for any adult to protect themselves. And I feel the defense has some very strong points to make, regardless of the politics and optics of the situation at large. For Mr. Rittenhouse's individual actions, I feel that defense is going to put up a very strong justification that he was allowed to use deadly force when confronted with these quote unquote rioters.
Josh, thank you for that. I want to take a moment to play another clip. This is where the prosecutor gave us an indication of who the first witness is, and it has a little bit of an interesting twist. Take a look.
On May 1st of 2020, Dominic Black bought the AR-15 for the defendant. That occurred up in Ladysmith, Wisconsin. Dominic Black used money that was given to him by the defendant to go to an Ace Hardware up in Ladysmith and buy the gun in Dominic Black's name. Now you might ask, why was it necessary for Dominic Black to do that? Why couldn't the defendant do that? Because the defendant was 17. And Dominic Black and the defendant knew that because the defendant is 17, he cannot purchase a gun. He cannot legally own a gun. And so this was, in effect, a straw purchase on behalf of Dominic Black, on behalf of the defendant.
Oh, so Dominic Black is going to be the first witness that the state calls here, Josh. We know that he's a friend of Kyle Rittenhouse's. Interesting choice. What do you think about it?
A brilliant stroke by the state, because the state knows Mr. Rittenhouse is going to say, hey, I'm just defending myself. I'm being attacked while trying to protect this community. And so the state needs to go in from the very beginning and show that when Kyle Rittenhouse showed up on the scene that night, he was looking for a fight. He was picking a confrontation, and that's going to lead to him being labeled as an aggressor. And once Kyle Rittenhouse is labeled effectively as an aggressor, the self-defense option falls to the side. And that's a great stroke by the state.
Josh Schiff, we're so glad to have you with us. Criminal defense attorney based in Atlanta, Georgia. He'll be on the program this afternoon giving us more analysis. We're going to squeeze in a break before the jury is back to hear the defense opening statement. Thank you for watching Court TV.